Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so Emma Vigeland of The Majority Report did an appearance on CNN. They've been appearing more on there as of lately, her and Sam, although it's been a little while. There was an appearance that he was supposed to have around the time that CNN was talking about Zohran Mamdani's wife's Instagram posts or Instagram likes or something like that. There was some story or debate that was going to happen on that topic specifically, and it didn't happen. So that was the last I heard of them appearing on this specific show. This is Abby Phillips' show with like the roundtable debate. So Emma Vigeland went on last night and had a great appearance. Kind of knocked it out of the park. Immediately from the gate, she came across well and kind of dominated the conversation. I don't know if they purposely set it up that way, but even later on in the conversation, she is really just taking the opportunity to pipe up. And I think she exhibits some good tactics of controlling the conversation and controlling the sort of center of gravity of the conversation, which I'm sure she wasn't thinking about it on that level, but I'm also sure that she could sense as she was doing this that, you know, the energy of the room was kind of like shifting around her. And I think that's the right way to have these type of conversations so that you are not boxed in to a conversation that you don't want to be having. So here is her intro real quick, talking about the government shutdown and the current state of that in Congress in terms of whether or not the deal that they're trying to get through is going to go through. Currently, it looks like they're trying to carve out funding for DHS, but not for ICE. This is what's causing the holdups at TSA and whatnot. So that's what they started with here on this program. And here is Emma kicking the whole thing off with a good 2 minutes monologue right at the top.
You saw this move from Trump to fund TSA by basically going around Congress, or that's what his executive order says at least, because they understand that this is hurting Republicans more, as had the previous government shutdown when you also had, after that, the Epstein files and the scandal from that. And this is where Trump has kind of entered into kind of lame duck territory besides the criminal and illegal wars that he's waging. ICE should not be funded at all anymore. This is an organization that is completely out of control. I don't know if people are forgetting, but at the beginning of this year, ICE killed in cold blood 2 American citizens, or DHS, whichever, and that was a part of the funding that was blocked. And there has been no accountability on that front. Since Trump got into office, over 40 people have died in ICE detention, and we have no idea what's going on with those investigations. And you hear about the conditions in these detention facilities, which you could call camps, where children are not getting the adequate medical care that they need. There's no medical care being provided at all. And people are in squalid conditions. They're being warehoused. It's a human rights violation. So the Democrats should absolutely hold the line on this front. But we're burying the lead here. John Thune and Mike Johnson are not aligned here. Thune was a part of passing this with unanimous consent, understanding that this was hurting the Republicans in the Senate. And what Mike Johnson is doing is he's afraid of losing his speakership. Because in 2023, the House GOP basically said that you just need one member to call up and recall the speaker. And so he's terrified that if he moves an inch away from the president, who is absolutely out of control. I mean, his rantings, his dementia-laden rantings are insane. If they move 1 inch away from him, he's going to lose his job. So that means that everybody who is experiencing all these horrible instances with their travel and incidents, I should say, when they're traveling and flying, that's because Mike Johnson's afraid to lose his job. And all those TSA agents that have to work without pay as ICE stands over their shoulder, that's Mike Johnson.
Emma, I'm actually glad you said that. I'm glad you said that Democrats should hold the line, because that's exactly what they're doing. Everything that we're seeing right now, exactly as you put it, is because Democrats are quote-unquote.
Okay, so I think she's exactly right when it comes to the shutdown, and I'm glad to see that getting out on a mainstream sort of liberal centrist type of platform where, you know, it can be said that Democrats should not cave when it comes to this shutdown fight, because it's a way to use the leverage that they have in a way that Democrats rarely have the ability to do, rarely have the guts to do. And really at this point, it's all the base wants, is for them to just sit on their hands, use whatever leverage they have. And frankly, if things grind to a halt more and more, and things get more and more chaotic at the airport, and Trump's ability to pay ICE agents, TSA agents. I think that's a good thing. That's the type of warfare they waged against Obama when he was trying to do much less extreme things. So it's the precedent that has been set for how you grind the government to a halt when a president is acting in a way that you think is out of line. So that's where we're at. And this guy who hops in at the end here, Tim Parrish, is a regular on this CNN show. He pushes the MAGA angle pretty hard. And there's another MAGA guy who's sitting across the table who gets a little bit less airtime this time around. But this guy, Tim Parrish, you'll see the way he picks up on what Emma said at the end there is a theme through the rest of this conversation. He keeps taking the opportunity to try to fight with her, argue with her, and a lot of the program turns into them arguing. So Emma Vigeland took up a lot of space on this program by getting into it with this guy and coming off very well while doing it, in my opinion. So here's the next part of this where they are debating about Iran, and Emma brings up the genocide in Gaza, which kind of flips the whole energy of this panel. So here's that.
If Iran rears its ugly head and attempts to continue doing what they've done for many, many years as the number one state sponsor of terrorism, this president will take action. I don't want that to happen. I don't think anyone at this table or any of the American public wants that to happen, but everyone should be on notice that this is a president of action who will, in fact, do what he needs to do to carry out his mission of protecting the American people.
What do you mean as a state sponsor of terrorism, though? How do you define terrorism?
Are we going to argue that Iran is literally the number one?
Is Iran committing genocide in Gaza right now, like the Israeli government is, which dragged us into this war, which every president prior...
number one sponsor of terrorism.
For 47 years, the Iranians have killed Americans and our allies across this world.
Okay.
They are trying to obtain nuclear weapons so they can annihilate Israel and potentially capitals in Europe.
There's no evidence of that. The JCPOA was actually a successful deal that Obama negotiated.
That you're an Iranian apologist.
Yeah, this is so. There's nothing I can do that call out Israel's genocide and then everybody swarms.
No.
It's the one thing you can't say. It is about Gaza. This is about a regional conflict that's spiraling out of control that the president is adding to.
But there's no evidence that Iran wants nuclear weapons. They lied. The international.
We killed the Ayatollah, the older father, who was actually against building a nuclear weapon because he thought that it was going to contribute here.
I'm shocked that you are defending the Iranians, and I got to tell you, I hope that you tuck yourself in at night under that pillow of lies that you just told about the Iranians. That is absolute a crock of a word I can't say on national television.
Okay, so the United States is funding a government that an Israeli human rights group that Selim says is committing genocide, as is Amnesty International, as is every credible human rights group right now. We are there's a massacre in Gaza. There are hundreds of thousands of people unaccounted for under rubble. That's what I define as terrorism. Now, Iran is now exerting their leverage over the Strait of Hormuz.
Do you want the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon, yes or no?
Thousands of people that have died at the hands of Iran would disagree with your personal description of what terrorism is. And I'm sorry, it doesn't meet the bill.
I mean, killing civilians is what I define it as.
All of the points that have been made here, we're in a very cordial debate, and I think that all of the points have been heard and well taken, except this one. There can be there can be no ambiguity. There can be no question. And the American public, I think, is sitting at home watching this, gripping their chairs at the idea that you are a Iranian sympathizer. And the people
gripping their chairs?
The people that, and it's not funny. The idea of what the, and that's scary. The idea of what the Iranian regime has done around the world, not just to Americans, but to their own people. You talked about rights and things. They killed 30,000 people.
I don't defend the Iranian government, but the reason that we have this government is because they reinstalled the Shah.
He asked you a question about, do you want Iran to have a nuclear bomb? And
the reason this government exists is because I don't want anyone to. I want we should have denuclearization across the board, and Israel shouldn't have.
You guys are you're really piling on Emma, because I have not heard either one of you say anything critical of either the U.S. military operation right now, either the fact that Israel has more of a plan and a strategy, and the United States, which is supposed to be leader, is following Israel. I mean, come on.
I can't make it any clearer. She just said...
No, you're continuing.
Do we want Iran to have a nuclear bomb?
I think the point has been made.
I just said I don't think that any nation should have nuclear bombs. We should denuclearize across the board, and Israel shouldn't have one, neither should Iran.
Yeah, so she was sharp here, and she has a nonchalance that I think comes across really well, especially in the face of this MAGA guy who's really trying to pull the moralistic argument against her. And so this is the thing that they have perfected, the ability to rebuff criticisms about, oh, how could you say this? And it's inappropriate to say this. Even on this very program, you have people like this guy, Scott Jennings, who say some pretty atrocious things just because they're like, yeah, I'm on the right, I'm a Republican, I'm hiding behind that brand. But they find their moralizing roots when it comes to the issue of war, our enemies abroad, and Iran. And so he keeps coming back to this point throughout the debate about, how could you say this about Iran? How could you be defending Iran? I cannot believe you're an Iran defender. And he really tries to seize on that as something to beat her with over and over again. But every single point that she makes is exactly what I think your average person would say about this, in terms of the U.S. not having any control over it, the U.S. only doing this because of Israel, and the fact that Israel's genocide and their impunity with which they committed that genocide has clearly paved the way for them to have this level of impunity when it comes to Iran, to the point where we are openly saying at the highest levels, Marco Rubio is saying that we just did this because we knew Israel was going to do it. And nowhere in that statement is the option that America has to say, no, Israel, you're not going to do that, which historically America has had the leverage to do that. So why all of a sudden is that leverage not there? So then, as she laughs and points out that everybody's jumping in because she said this thing about genocide, and that is when the other MAGA guy across the table jumps in at her. So she is reacting to this by kind of laughing it off. And also, I think that, okay, yeah, just kind of waiting for them to finish. Something about it just works well, I think, filling the space, and she kind of just kept control of the dynamic the whole time. And especially when she brought that up, the dynamic of the conversation flipped, because as much as they might want to split hairs over that issue, if you think the average person doesn't connect the genocide in Gaza to what we're now seeing in Iran, you're completely missing what's happening in this moment, what's happening politically in this moment. So it's good to see that Emma is on top of that and drawing that connection, drawing attention back to that, rather than allowing it to be something that we move on from, because now it forces everybody in this room to talk about it. And you do have multiple people at this table who are very critical of Israel and talk openly about the fact that Israel is kind of dog walking us in this. I've used that phrase a couple times lately. And this lady, Naira Haq, has some decent comments when it comes to Israel. I couldn't find too much on her. She seems like sort of a establishment type journalist and communications expert, that type of thing. Don't know too much about what she's affiliated with, and I think she stopped short of making the type of genocide comments that Vigeland made, but you know, she was there at least to defend her a little bit, so I thought that was good. And this last part I'll show you real quick. Just a quick little exchange to show you, I think, why this guy locked in on trying to argue with Emma on every single point, aside from the fact that he could just see that she was taking over the panel and taking over the direction of the panel. I think this depicts the dynamic between them well, and also shows a rhetoric style that leftists can use in conversations like this going forward. So here's a quick exchange between the two of them about free college benefits in the military.
He is in political trouble because of his own choices here.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to your point, one, you had mentioned the $11 billion figure, what we're spending a day on this war of choice in Iran. Bernie Sanders' proposal in 2019 for college for all, let's adjust it for inflation. I think it was like nearly $50 billion, but let's make it 60. You could pay for college for all for Americans in a week with what we're spending in Iran. And you know what a lot of these young men and women who are signing up to be on the front lines, who might die in this war in Iran, are signing up for? Yes, in many ways, patriotism, a sense of duty, but college education.
And I'm also going to push back on the idea, because it's completely false, that the thought that's at the forefront of people's mind when they join the military is to go to college. That people actually, less and less people are using the GI Bill and benefits. People join the military to go, in fact, serve their country, to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yes, the Republicans are gutting VA benefits. That's a big part of the problem.
Emma brings up this thing about military recruits going in for the free college and ties that back to a Bernie Sanders proposal from the first time he ran in 2016, free college for all, and that could be paid for with the money that's going towards Iran just already, and that is a big reason that people go into the military in the first first place. So great point to bring up, and another example of her making a decision about where to try to like direct the center of gravity of the room. Like, let's get everybody talking about this. And it works with this other guy because not only does he take the bait, but I think that the reason he keeps latching onto this is because, as he says, he views this as like crazy socialist stuff. So Emma Vigeland is successfully baiting him by saying things that to him sound crazy, and that he makes the calculation in the moment he can make sound crazy. He can fixate on this and try to alienate her or make a spectacle out of how crazy this position is. But because Emma Vigeland is being pretty disciplined about what she says here, she's coming off much better. And obviously it's a CNN audience, which is more and more looking for voices like Emma Vigeland. Very few of them want to hear anything that this MAGA type guy has to say. So obviously they're going to like her more, and she was given genuinely some space to shine in this debate. But because what she's saying is not actually that radical, but it's something that this guy is going to take as radical because of, oh, socialism, that essentially gives her more time to talk about it and baits him into this weird thing about how people don't go into the military for that reason, which they do. I mean, over half, there's statistics showing that, some statistics showing a lot more, that it's at least a reason people go in. So obviously it's something that people use to recruit, and they go after kids in poor neighborhoods and poor schools and give them an opportunity for education, an opportunity to get a car, to have healthcare. They offer these things to new recruits, obviously, because it's a way to get them in. And there's definitely speculation about whether free healthcare, offering that as a right to people, would cut down on the amount of people that enter into the military on a voluntary basis. So, I mean, there's real merit to what she's saying. He's just trying to shut it down because of this thing about patriotism. And as I've said before, I don't think that's going to play super well anymore. I think it'll play a little bit because there's an attitude for the patriotism, but this thing about Israel and the fact that Israel got us into this is devastating. They're just not going to be able to overcome that. And I suppose there could be some kind of attack on American soil or something like that that would lead Americans to have more of a bloodlust. But I don't think so. I think even in that case, the pressure would be on American leadership to stop this. But they're going to try. Guys like this are going to try, and they're the ones who control the narrative right now. None of the other portions of the coalition that don't want this matter at all when it comes to MAGA. So it's a moment for people like Emma Vigeland to get in there and have a genuinely anti-war message, and a message that has some real answers to some of these questions that people have about how did Israel get us into this war, and what does it really look like to reconcile this. And the only direction to go with that is a human rights focused direction, and it's clear that the needle is moving towards that when it comes to Israel and what people are willing to put up with in terms of Israel's abuses of human rights in order to secure what they want. So as that becomes something that the average person can relate to even more, being able to flesh out an argument around that about a general anti-imperialism, a general winding down of America's colonial influence on those parts of the world, is something that we can adopt as a policy going forward, which will lead to less of these entanglements down the road. So that's something that Americans are ready to hear at this point, and this is Emma Vigeland creating inroads to do so. So like I said, they gave her a lot of room to shine here. Hopefully they feel like this was good TV. It seems like this Tim Parrish guy thought it was good TV to keep going after her, and like I said, I think that there's an opportunity there, as they think something like what Emma Vigeland is saying sounds so crazy. It's basically a way to bait them into allowing the center of gravity to shift in the room so that we can talk about some of these Bernie Sanders style policies, which we haven't had much opportunity to talk about in the past several years. But it still is what people want to hear. And by baiting these guys in with the how could you propose such a socialist thing? Well, actually, give me a moment to explain. Turns out people actually want to hear that kind of message, and the more we say it, the more it's going to become the norm of democratic aesthetic politics, and that is what we want. But even still, all these years later, we don't hear nothing about it. But Trump has implied that the Iranian leaders have tried to kill him multiple times and didn't succeed in it. And it seems like he was hinting at something that had happened.